So the starting point is the Ldx page on the regional hub. This page is public, so it's a good place to learn more about the Ldx process as it relates to how the RDP is supporting Ldx. Incidentally, you can find a link here to the PDF data and map books that Kevin mentioned earlier that Jung and team have been working hard on. This is also a good place to learn more about the local data exchange process in general on SCAG's website. Kevin and Tom already talked about the timeline. You can learn a little bit more about the timeline here. I did want to highlight sort of what does it mean to engage in the Ldx process as part of the RDP. And at a simple level, you can think about there being two types of participants. There are folks that may contribute data, so that are actually like looking at the data or own a piece of data you want to upload. So you're making a contribution of data to SCAG for a jurisdiction and for a particular type of data. There's also reviewers. So reviewers are, you can perhaps more of like a manager type role within the local jurisdiction who have the responsibility to review contributions made by their team at the local jurisdiction before it makes it to SCAG. So it provides an additional level of review. You can make sure that the data going to SCAG is correct, and also helps ensure that, you know, when data makes it to SCAG, it's gone through an additional level of vetting. So there's those two roles. And as we get into the demos, just keep that in mind. We'll spend a lot of time talking about contributors, but we'll talk about both roles as we get into the demo. Now, to become an Ldx participant, you start by requesting an account. So just to show you what that looks like, it's a fairly simple form here. So you just click on that, you provide your email, you request to use government email address, first name, last name, the jurisdiction, the city or county that you're supporting, whether or not you're a contributor, want to play the role of a contributor or a reviewer, then your job title and phone number, and that's it. So you make that request for an account. Initially, that will be primarily SCAG staff reviewing those requests for an account. When you get approved for an account, you'll receive an email that looks a little bit like this. Ldx account request approved. It'll have a link to Ldx Web, your temporary password that you'll be changing as soon as you log in, as well as a link to request technical assistance if you have any help. So in this particular case, I requested the role of local contributor for the city of Aliso Viejo. So once you have an account, you can then log into what we call Ldx Web, which is in a sense the entry point into Ldx for Ldx participants. And that is private. So I could have clicked the link in the email, or there's a link down here at the bottom of the page. I click that, I'm going to be asked to sign in. There are a few options for how to sign in, but those of you working on behalf of jurisdictions and partners would click this jurisdiction and partner login. I'll log in with my account. The goal here, by the way, too, is when the regional hub starts to support logins for collaborating on regional initiatives, the idea is really to provide that single sign-on experience. So this does use kind of enterprise identity management behind the scenes to facilitate that single sign-on. Okay, so I've logged in, and now what we're looking at is a different website. So this is a second website, and this is what we call Ldx Web. This is your portal into all things Ldx, specifically as an Ldx participant. You can also think about this as a bit of a workspace. If you're doing a lot of contribution to SCAG, this might be the site that you bookmark, for example. So scrolling down a little bit, here we can learn a little bit more about the data. Kevin, I believe, already touched on a lot of this already. Won't go through it, but you can see the different areas. These first 4 columns, which include 19 data sets, are or I think 18 or 19, depending on how you measure it. I think we have bikeways split into 2. These are the 19 data sets that are available right now through the regional data platform. Green region as well as growth are coming soon. Also to note, you can see there's a subset of these that are directly editable. Those that are not editable, you can still provide feedback on, and we'll show you how that works momentarily. Just before we do that, in terms of the high-level process, this might be implied from what I mentioned earlier, but it's pretty straightforward. A local contributor can make a contribution, and there's a few different ways of doing that, which I'll show in a moment. Once that contribution has been submitted, there's a job that gets created behind the scenes, in a sense that initiates a job or a workflow related to that contribution. So it can be tracked all the way through until it's either approved and integrated into the regional database or ultimately rejected and sent back to the local jurisdiction. But once a contribution's been made, then a local reviewer, the team of reviewers that are assigned to that local jurisdiction, if there's more than one, will get notified via email, and they'll be required to review and either approve or reject that data contribution. Assuming they approve it, that will then go to SCAG. And again, there's more emails happening behind the scenes, but once it's approved by a local reviewer, SCAG then gets that data and reviews it, incorporates it into the database, and if needed, can reroute that back to the local reviewer for final review. That typically only happens if SCAG made changes as part of integrating that contribution into the regional database.